All right, now we have color selection, and that's probably the most difficult part for most people. But you can go to a place called Sew Boutique, and I'll have that in a screen for you, sewboutique.com, and that's where I get all of my fabrics. And the reason I like their fabrics is because they have the coloring from light to dark, and all in the same piece, so that when you're cutting it, you can cut from the sections as you want it, from light to dark, and that makes your values remain the same, but gives you the color spectrum to put in each ray. And so what I do when I get started is I play around with laying them out to see how I want them, and I've kind of changed it a little bit every time I do it, just because I like to see a different combination of fabrics together. And so in this one, I have 1 is the yellow, 2 is the hazel, 3 is the silver, and these 3 colors again will be repeated at the point of each cross. Then we go to color number 14, which is, and I have the purples in here, and then I get into some teals, greens, and blues, and then orange and reds and cinnamons and some more greens again. And the reason I have grouped them kind of in color spectrums is I've noticed that when you finish putting them together, the rays, you kind of get a grouping of that color in the rays, and there's subtle differences between them, and it really has a nice overall impact when you look at the whole quilt together. In the first one that I did, you can look at the picture of that one, and you'll see that I've rearranged the colors a little bit, but it's totally up to what pleases you as to how you want to organize them. Now, the suggestion that I have for once you get them in the order that you want them, if you buy them from Sew Boutique, you get labels that look like this, and it has the color name on here. And so I'll put those labels out on a sheet of paper, and once I get them arranged like I want, I write the number of which one is where, and that way I can remember the color number, so that if for some reason I run out of fabric and I need to reorder, I know exactly which one I need. Then I take another sheet of paper and I write them sequentially in the order in which I have them, and that will help you when you go from quadrant to quadrant and you need to know which fabric you're going to cut out next. Now, the one thing that's not drawn on the pattern just yet, and it's totally up to you, is the placement. On the pattern, you will see that each ray is divided into at least 3 sections, and some are divided into 4 or 5 sections depending on the length of the ray. And so you can arbitrarily decide where you want those. And like stained glass, they're not just evenly spaced all the way around. So you just take your ruler and come in and put a couple of lines where you want the divisions to be. And then on the next one, you don't want them to line up and be right next to each other, so you just kind of draw your lines in independently. And you do that all the way around until you have all the lines in. And again, that's totally arbitrary for you as to how you want it. Then, since I've got 1 and 2 drawn there, you would then know how big to make each section to cut a piece. And you can see the pieces are going to be small, especially if you're making the small one. And that's what this particular one is. Later, I'll be using one that's a little bigger, simply because I've got one in progress that will be the same style, but it's just in bigger pieces. So you can take a little piece, and you want the lighter fabrics toward the outside edges, and you want the darker colors toward the center, and the medium colors in the middle. So this obviously is way too big for this section down here, so you just simply cut it the size that you need it. And you want things to overlap, so you need to cut it at least 1/4 of an inch all the way around, bigger than the piece that's here. If you've done any paper piecing before, you know that you can simply lay a piece on it and then you trim around it after you sew, and we'll get into the sewing of it in a minute. But you will now need to go in and draw your lines across there as to where you want them. and I'll get ready now and we'll do some sewing here in just a second.